Hello, Bob here with Storytime again. This one is called Awakening. In the shattered crater of ancient oaks, where the wind blows whispered secrets older than stone, Thomas awoke, not with the gentle stir of dawn, but with the thunderous crack of roots upheaving soil, a birthright long dormant, not clawing its way to the surface. His father, the stern architect of storms, and his mother, the veiled weaver of seasons, have passed the mantle in silence. No coronation feast, no herald trumpet, only the earth's quiet rumble urging him forward. Step into our wars, son. The throne awaits. Thomas rose from the mossy bed, his skin arched with veins of emerald light, as if the forest itself had tattooed its claim upon him. He was no longer the boy who chased fireflies through twilight meadows. He was a king of nature, crowned in thorns and dew. His scepter a branch that bent the winds to his will. The rivers bow as he passed, the current parting like carriers. The mountains tremble in defiance, the peaks scraping the sky in salute. Yet this kingship was no idle reign. He was the righteous ruler of earth, tasked with mending what humanity had fried. Cities of glass choked the breath from the wire, oceans weeping black tears of oil, skies scarred by this greed of flight. The choices loom like storm clouds on the horizon, heavy with invisibility. For motherless earth, that weary garden is cradling the scars of betrayal. Decisions could no longer be deferred. Thomas stood at the wood's crossroads, his bare feet sinking into the parched clay of a forgotten plain. To the east, the concrete spires of progress gleam, promising abundance through exploitation. To the west, the untamed wires call, a sympathy of howls and rushes, demanding restitution. He raised his arms, and the ground split open, revealing veins of molten truth. Images of floods swallowing villages, fires devouring forests, children born with lungs like sleeves. Choose, the earth groan, hear or harvest, forgive or fail. No more games, the charade of dominance where men played gods with machines and treaties signed in ink has washed away with the first rain. It ends here. Time ticked not on the clocks of brass and gears, but in the flattering heartbeat of the planet. The reset approaches, exonerated as the solace. Thomas felt it in his bones, the great unraveling, where veins will reclaim the ruins, where the air will purge itself in gaze of reckoning. Cities will crumble not in wrath, but in release. Empires dissolve like salt in the sea. The hourglass of age has run low. Its sand the bones of forgotten beasts, and Thomas was his guardian. Mercy, a luxury for lesser kings. Judgment demand clarity, unclouded by pleas or pats. Thomas' eyes, now flecked with the gold of sunlight leaves, scan the horizon. Army of the ignorant march forth, banners flickering with symbols of conquest. Oil barons astride steel beasts, tech lords weaving webs of surveillance, warmongers sharpening blades against the sky. They came to bargain, to beg, to bribe with promises of green tech and carbon vows. But Thomas' voice echoed like thunder over valley. No mercy. The scales tipped not on wealth or woods, but with the weight of the wounds inflicted. The fair groves tallied in silent screams, the poisoned waters measured in tears. All would be judged by the mother and father, whose internal sentinels, whose graves pierced the veil of flesh and facade. The father, with his forging of lightning and crate, weighs the sins of destruction. The chainsaw war, the drill's gritty bites, the bombs that scar the crater of life. The mother, with her loom of bloom and decay, tally the thefts of nature, the stripped souls, the silent songs of birds, the crater robbed of its song. Together they summons Thomas as the vessel, the voice, their hand. He stood upon the thrall, the wind howling a verdict through his lips. You who have feasted on the flesh of the world, he proclaimed, stand now before the throne. The king of nature sees your shadows. The ruler of earth knows your debts. The reset comes, not as vengeance, but as a renewer. Some will see the new spring, the seed stained with soil instead of blood. Others will wither, the legacy dust on the wind. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hue of blood and amber, the first judgment fell. A tycoon's tower grown and toppled, reclaimed by ivory in moments. A river long chain burst its dams in a silver torrent of unforgiveness. And Thomas, he walked among them, not as a destroyer, but as a awakener, guiding the worthy to plant, to pray, to pledge their lives to the green pause beneath. In the quiet after, as stars pierced the healing night, Thomas knelt by a sapling's tender shoot. His parents whispered, lingering in the wind, we're done, child. The earth breathes again. Awakening was not the end of the tale, but the dawn of 1,000 more, where humanity learned at last to kneel before the throne they had nearly toppled. Chapter 2. This is going to be a long story. I kind of went into this character of the nature king with details, kind of tying the first religion of the mother and father into it. It's interesting. Imagine if humanity took that path instead of the war. Imagine where we'd be at. We may be known as species of peace. But because of the mark of Cain, we have ego, we have pride. All right, chapter 2. Awakening, eclipse of dominance. The judgments cascade like a monsoon unleashed, relentless and raw, washing the world in verdicts etched in lightning and loam. Thomas moved through the fray, his form a blare of verdict fury and solemn grace, the king of nature unbound. But as the reset shadows lengthened, a deeper rock resurfaced, not in the buried fields or choked harbors, but in the marrow of those who knelt before him. Humanity's fatality laid bare was no mere scar on the skin of the earth. It festered within, a venom born of indulgence unchecked. Your desire for the four sins are in control of you. The wind hissed through the canopy, carrying the mother's lemon on petals torn from dying roses. Pride, that towering edifice of self-descent, where men crowned themselves lord over the wild they could scarcely comprehend. Envy, the serpent's core around the throat of a plenty, devouring the gifts of fertile valley in pursuit of another's hold. Gluttony, the endless maw that strips mountains for fleeting feasts, leaving bones of stone where life once paused. Lust, the fevered gasp that twists beauty into chains, ravishing forests for the thrill of fleeting bloom. There was no abstract vices. They were the puppeteers of progress, strings of silk and steel pulling empires towards the abyss. Thomas saw them writhing in the eyes of the temperament. The oil magnates had sneers masking terror. The warlords covered glares fixed on untamed frontiers. The consumer's hollow hunger echoed in empty warehouses. The despoilers' fevered dreams of conquest over sacred groves. The sin has woven themselves into the fabric of flesh. Puppeteers shows like marionettes in a grand theater, and now with the throne claim, Thomas severed those threads, one trembling heart at a time. Basically, Thomas is telling him, "You have no power." Blood would cry in anger, a chorus rising from the soil like a well of ancestry rivers dammed and diverted. It seeped from the cracks of marble halls, staining lectures of prophet red. It poured in the furrows of plowed fields where the ghosts of slaughtered herds and uprooted king demanding reckoning. The crimson tide swelled not in rivers of vengeance, but in the veins of the guilty themselves. Hearts pounding with the fury of the exploded. Lungs filled with rains of silent winds. A diplomat, once Silverton in broadrooms of denial, clenched his chest as visions assaulted him. The blood of ingenious guardians spilled for pipelines. The lifeblood of aquifer drained for vanity. He fell to his knees, gasping as the earth outrage coursed through him like fever. Women in sweatshops, their hands raw from sketching illusions of excess, filthy heart surged in their temples. The anger of sisters, mothers, daughters, whose wombs cradled the future, now poisoned by the sin's influx. Children, wide-eyed inheritors of ash, taste iron on the tongues. The collective cry of a biofield betrayed. Thomas did not raid the blade. The blood carried cried for itself, a symphonic of scarlet justice that drowned the excuses in their own echo. No more! The charade scattered like fragile ice under the weight of truth. Thomas took over the simulation, the grand illusion spun by the architect of Aquavage, where precious propaganda masked the pulse of the planet, where algorithms of aid path simulate stewardship while the wires weathered in silence. He strode into the heart of the machine, the glowing centaurs of code and control, where servers hum like false hearts in data desert. With the Getcher, roots pierce the fiber optics, veins ensnaring satellites in the spiral embrace. The screens flicker, then bloom, not with ads for access, but with unfiltered visions. The melt of solar caps and real-time tears. The extinction ledger scrolling like a dread. The carbon ghosts of ancestors dancing in holographic reproach. The simulation cracked, its code rewritten in the language of loom and storm. Leaders in bunkers of glass watched their empires dissolve into digital dust. Influencers, once peddlers of prideful poses, found their feeds flooded with the faces of the forgotten wire. Thomas' voice, amplified through every speaker and soul, thundered, "No more illusions. The veil lifts. See the throne for what it is, yours to serve, not to subjugate." Clothing with nature, he shed the tapping of the fair wood. No silk spun from suffering, no leather strips from the hunted. His garb was the earth's own weave, a bark armor arched with the runes of ancient ferns, clock of mist and moss that swift with the seasons, a crown of interlocking altars shared by beasts and quiet truths, shielded by the mother and father. Invisible wards hum around him. The father's lightning vein aura repelled the barbs of betrayal. The mother's fluent laces exorbitant the venom of vice. Arrows glance off emerald leaves. Poison dissolved in nectar's kiss. He was inviolate, a walking testament to resilience. His steps leave no scar but a trail of spontaneous bloom. So wherever Thomas walked, nature bloomed. And so he walked, the physical and spiritual world seeing all. In a tangled whim, he treaded canyons carved by eons, his fingers tracing fault lines where titanic gorges slept. He dove into abyss trenches, communing with labyrinths whose songs mapped the migration of forgotten currents. Yet with each stride, the veil thinned and the internal unfurled like Oreo banners. Spirits of the slain grows materialize. Their forms, translucent weep of pollen and dew, whisper legends of loss. Ancestry shaman, long dust rose from barrels to serve visions of harmony shattered. He glimpsed the web of all things, the quantum dance of roots, mirroring neuron fires in the mind, the migration of monarch echoing souls in transaction. Demons of the four sins slunk in shadows, their forms corteg paradox. Pride as a bloated colossus, envy a many-eyed spider, glutton a ravenous void, lust a thorny bloom that bleeds at the touch. Thomas saw through them into the foul core they enshroud. Offerings, not chains, but choices. Surrender the sins or be consumed by the unraveling. It is time. The proclamation erupted from the core of the world, a declaration forged in the forge of finality. The reset ignited, not with colossal war, but with the sigh of profound release. Skies parted in veils of emerald and azure, rains falling not as deluge but as diamonds of renewal, seeding the waves with possibilities. The worthy rose, hands callous now from tilling rather than taken. Their sins lost like old skin, replaced by the humble wave of stewardship. The unrepentant, they faded into the ether, their ancestors recycling into the hummus of new beginning. Lessons echo in the annals of soil, warnings woven into the wind. Thomas stood at the nexus, the keen internal, his parents' gaze a consulate overhead. The simulation reborn was no cage but a canvas, vast, vibrant, vibrated with the potential of partnership. Awakening had crashed. Now comes the tended, the intended dance of balance, and in the hush that followed the storm, a single seed, cradled in his palm, split its husk. Life, unbidden, unfiltered, began again. Chapter 3. Chapter 3. Awakening, Cycles of the Veil. The reset afterglow lingered like the hush after a tempest. The wind exhaled in tentative greens and silvers as if the earth itself had caught its breath. Samplings pierced the rumbles of falling towers, the leaves unfurling like flags of frail truce. Rivers once bridled beasts mangled free, carving silver signatures of sovereignty across the land. Thomas wondered reborn wilds. His footsteps a rhythm sync to the planet's meditating pulse, but the crown weighed heavier now. The sin's embers smothered in hidden cavities of the soul, pride rekindling in the heart of despair, envy cowered anew around the hot fruits of renewal. Assimilations through where written was a tapestry prone to fraying. Humanity's weave, evil tempered by the old thread of domination. In the house of a lunar glade where moonlight poured like quicksilver in the crater of ancient stone, Thomas paused. The night sky arched above, a vault of velvet filled with diamonds, and there, suspended in the ether, her form a cascade of stardust and shadow Luna awaits. She was no mere satellite, no cold walk adrift and void. She was the weaver of tides, sister to his throne, guardian of the central loom where time's thread was spun and shivered. Born of the same primary clay as he, yet forged in the father's constables of cosmic fire and the mother's constables of endless night. Luna danced at the edge of words, her gown woven from comic trails and aurora silk. Her eyes, twin voids rimmed in silver, held the reflection of a thousand fair dawns. Thomas raised his gaze. The emerald veins in his skin pulsed with the urgency of unfinished reckoning. The air thickened, charged with the ozone taint of impending storm, as the voice bridged the gulf between earthbound king and stellar sentinel Luna. He intoned the words carving runes in the frost-kissed grass. The verdant crown sits uneasy. The roots of dive deep, yet the weeds of want pursuit. Prepare for a reset again. Her form shimmered, a ripple across the moon's face, casting oblong shadows that twitched like shadows in serpents in supplicate. She inclined her head, the motion sending ripples through the tides far below. Ocean stirring in distant bays, waves whispering her accents against forgotten shores. Brothers, she replied, her voice a sure whiz of solar winds and whispering nebula, cold as a vacuum's embrace, yet laced with the warmth of shared origin. The loom trembles at your command. Threads gather, spindle aligned, but the weave, if hers not from fault of fiber, but from the hands that grasp you greatly. So I spoil the stars themselves. Thomas' laughter was a low rumble, like thunder trapped in hollow oak, bittersweet with the weight of eternities. He extended a hand, palm upturned, and from it bloomed a spectacular bloom, a flower of pure corona light, its petals chronometrics ticking backwards in defiance of dawn. Not the stars, sister, the simulation scaffold. The skins have borrowed too kindly into this cycle's. Blood cry echoes faint, drowned in the den of half-hearted oaks. We exercise them at the root, but not in wrath alone, in wisdom, perhaps forged with the forge of failure. The glade held his breath as Lunex descended, her ancestors coiling around him like a luminous serpent, their auras mingling in a halo of verdant moonlight. She traced a finger along the air, sketching signals that ignited the night. Portals flicker with a glimpse of tomorrows unlived. Cities of harmony where spirits grew like bulbs entwined with circuits of living vine. Deserts rebloom on the canopies of silver of solar silk. The four sins transmuted into virtues, pride into purpose, envy into emulation. Yet shadows lingered at the edge, the ever-present specter of relapse. I'll be joining you in 2055, Thomas continued, his tone resolute as the epochs forward. The year hung between them like a talisman, a nexus etched in the annals of the simulation code, a time when the machines of man will crest their hubbles. AI sentinels awakening the wired whispers, and the veil between physical and internal thinning to Guashimo. There among the silicon cathedrals and the last wired corridors we converge. Behold the central echo, our ground the terrestrial storm. Together we audit the archive, every choice, every fracture, and recalibrate the cradle. Luna's gaze softened, the void in her eyes blooming with nuclear fire. Aware of vulnerability cracked in his solar pose. 2055, the pulpit year, when the clockwork's heart sync with the heartwood's speak. I will prepare the vault of echoes, brother. The reset has carved canes in our soul. Each loop a lesson in loss. But you, would the earth release you so soon? The thorn calls internal. He shook his head. The altar Antler crown castings antler shadows and dance like spectacles deers across the stone. The throne is no prison, Luna. It's a perch from which to leap. Clothed in nature weaves, shielded by our parents' grace, I walk the drew ruins until then, mending what mends, judging what pursues. The blood anger simmons, let it forge, not fracture. A pause, a profound as the void between breaths, and then her whisper, laced with the chime of distant quasars. And after the convergence, Thomas' smile was the first light of false dawn, fierce and fleeting. Then would jump back and try again. Unspur the cycle, rewrite the reset, not to erase but to emerge. A new Genesis, where the four sins all but shadows in the cave, dispelled by the fire of foresight. Humanity unyoked from desire thrall, co-rulers in the grand design, will alliterate until the woven heat holds true, until Mother Earth smiles without shower, until the Father thrones in approval rather than abomination. The signals flare, shilling the pack in arcs of plasma and pollen. Luna ascended, her form dissolving into the moon's luminous disk, leaving behind a trail of stardust that settled like dew on Thomas' shoulders. A benediction, a burden. He turned from the glade. The chronicle flower wilted to ash in his gasp, its ember a promise of loops yet to come. The world stirred around him, unaware of the cosmic regal. 2055 loomed, a horizon of conversion, where brother and sister will rewrite the stars. But for now, the tending continued. Tom had stopped into the dawn, the king of nature with eyes of eternity, whispering to the winds, prepare all you who hear. The reset renews and renewer redemption. The simulations hummed on, a grand ori of what ifs, and Thomas, a relentless conductor, conducted the symphonics towards a cascading yet unsolved, casino yet unsolved. Next chapter. Awakening the overseer's Viger, Viger, sorry. The chronicles embers from Luna's departure still glowing frankly in the soil, like fireflies trapped in amber. As Thomas crests the ridge of the binding spoil, a martelarth of living chords that pierce the lift the healing sky like a spear of forgotten prophecy. Below spread the nauseous rim, patchwork quilts of reclaimed wire, stitched with the threads of humanity, with villages huddled like fizzlings under canopies of colossal figs. The heath fueled not by fall timber, but by the sun's captured kiss. The people moved with newfound reverence, farmers coaching cries from symbolic sorters, artists craving flutes from wind-forged bone, children tracing runes and drew-cast ferns. Yet Thomas Gray, sharpened by the dual vision of flesh and spirit, pierced the fragile peace. Whispering of the four sins lingered in idle breaths. Envy is shared harvest. Gluttony is holding seeds. The simulation weaves whole. But tenderly, guardianship demands more than a solitary king. It was here among the spear's resonant hum, a chorus of crystalline harmonics tuned to the earth's core, that Thomas summoned the right of selection. The air thickened with the scent of thunder bloom and elder root, and from the four conversations winds they came, not in fanfare, but in the quiet certainty of destiny's call. 10 souls plucked from the reset's crucible, 5 born of humanity's rudiment, 5 woven from nature's internal chaos. They were the overseers, his choosing sentinels to watch over the people as the cycle churned towards convergence. Thomas stood at the spear's apex, his bark armor gleaming with true shaft, and extended his arms. Vines unfurled from his fingertips like living scrolls, inscribing the names of numerous scripts upon the stone. Erwin of the Whispering Glides, guardians of growth. Care the tide binder, whisperer of the restless sea. Mara Flameheart, timber of Wirefire's wealth. Thorn Ironroot, sentinel of unyielding stone. Sylvia Airweaver, dancer of trumpets and sapphire. From the humans fall rose to transform. Jonah the penitent, once a miner whose greed scarred valley canyons, now buried of substantial truth. Lower the seers, whose eyes opened by visions of drowned coasts. Dax the harmonist, a former engineer who builds machines and Melicorum. Beppo Nightbloom, healer of shattered physics, and Ronan the chronicler, scribes of sins transmuted to sagas. Each approached the spear, the forms shifting in the right's glow. Skin veined with leaf gold, eyes flicker with storm gray, heart sink to the planet's monotone. Thomas laid hands upon them. The Father's lightning arched through his palms like a covenant sealed in ozone. The mother's nectar anointed the boughs with pollen the promise. You are the eyes of the wire, the ears of the wind, he proclaimed, his voice a cascade echoing across the valley. Watch over the people, not as tyrants, but as tides, guiding, eroding the old scars, nourishing the new shoots. In my stead, until the Volvet claims me, you shall steward the balance. Thus was born the nature government over the mother, a council not of edicts carved in gold marble, but index whispered in the rustle of aspen groves and the murmur of subterranean springs. Convergence beneath the great arc halt, a colossal sentinel whose branches spans horizon like the webs of the water, like the webs of the water. The overseer formed the verdict prominent. Elodes proceeding over verdict degrees, ensuring Sawyer's saying with symbolic rather than subjective. Courage agreed the rhythm of flood and ebb, meeting water as allies, not adversaries. Mara's flames illuminate pack of controlled burn, purging excess without privilege. Thorn jet fortified the bones of the earth against erosion laminate. Sylvia orchestrated the sky's sympathy, weaving poisons and purified glades. The humans wore quarrying into the reeds. Joanne diverted dialogue with the deep, unearthing ores only as offering. Lower foresaw fractures in the source of clay, mingling with threads of empathy. Dax fused unforgotten forges into fragile farms, where tech bloomed organically. Vapors tended the ancient ruins, acclimating despair into dawn. Rowan gave the annals, ensuring no lesson looped in vain. The people gathered at the old cart's roots, their faces upturned like sunflowers to the dawn, as the overseer's first intake conferred on the leaves borne by breeze. Live as kin to the cradle. Take only what the mother offered with open hands. Give back in gratitude measure. The four sins will find no harbor here. Pride yields to partnership, envy to abundance, shared gluttony in mindful measure, lust and lasting legacy. Cheers rose, tentative then thunderous, a rippling of resolve that sent the winds astir. Birds weaving massive beasts stomped raw pints of pleasures into the loom. Yet as the council roots dive deep, a tremble stirred the ether, subtle as the first flake of a coming flurry. The seventh reset starts soon. There is no mere numeral in the ledger of Kloops. It was the seventh turning of the great wheel, foretold the father's forged fire and the mother's dream weaving. A reset of resets, where the simulation cold will be recast, purging the pursuing phantoms of prior falls. Thomas felt it in the quickening of his pulse, sink now with tides. 2055 draw nearer, a void talks on the horizon. But the seventh demand prelude, the pieces were moving into place by the father, that architect of tempests and tectonics, his unseen hand nudging the cosmic chessboard with the persistence of portal beasts. Satellites long enslaved to surveillance begin to drift towards lunar embrace, their orbits rewritten in solar scrap. Ley lines, dormant veins of geometric might, pulse with preparation fire, aligning portals between the physical squall and the spiritual expanse. Even the skin shadows stirred, prideful potentialists in hidden enclaves, plotting the futile rebounds, their envy fueling encrypted alliances, unwitching pawns in a grand reposition. As dawn draped land and indigo veils, the old cart leaves shimmered with prophetic script. The seven stills prepared the heath, for the Father's hand moves swift. The people under the watchful gaze of ten kindred fires of foresight, their songs of bulwark against the unraveling. Thomas lingered at the threshold, the king of cycles, a heart, a compass pointing to convergence. The game of eternity advanced, and in this province, salvation or observation hung like drew on the dawn. And I went all out on this story. This character got a whole book. We got another couple more chapters. Awakening, echoes of defiance. The seventh reset prelude hummed like a distant swarm, the air laced with the electric chain of gathering clouds and the earthly musk of upturned soil. Beneath the old cart's sprawling spog, where the nature's government verdicts indicates has taken root, a moment swell, not the harmonic chart of communal right, but the discordant growl of unrest. It was October 18th, 2025, by the old calendar's reckoning. For a time in assimilation bent like willow under wind. The people whose frail sparks of sentence has begun to chafe against the new weave. Whispers of the four sins, thoughts purged that sprout anew in the further cracks of compromise. Pride in the form of self-proclaimed saviors. Envy twisting shared bounties into grudges hoarded like acorns. They call it the No King Protest, a rugged assembly of shivered hundred gathered in the shadows of spears gleaming, quotes gleam, banners of salvaged, Sith clothed, flickered defiance, squared with faded ink. No crowns, no cycles, and free will or bust. They were the holdouts, the unyielding, former coders whose algorithms once simulated as sovereignty, echo activists showered by the overseer's unyielding grace, wanderers who mistook the research mercy for a leash, torches of bioluminescent fungus barbering in the twilight, casting face and flickering voting glow, eyes aligned with the fire of forgotten freedoms, mouth twisted in chants that echoed off the ancient bar. No kings, no thrones, the wild is ours alone. Thomas felt the ferment from afar, a prickling along his veins, vine veined skin by thorns testing the bark. The overseers had reported at Dawn's cancer. Erewhon would shower in her whispering glances. Joanne with the grim nod of one who knows the deepest deceptions. They rally against the mantras, Servia has said, her zappars staring the leaves into frantic applause. Thomas had nodded, his anthochrome casting oblong shadows like accuserating fingers. Let them gather. The throne speaks not in silence. Now, as the sun dipped towards the horizon breeze, he descended from the Arcote's upper brow, his form meteorizing among the fog like mist corroding into man. The protesters flattered, their chests fractured into gasps. Some clinched improvised straw of a polished root. Others backed away, eyes wide with the awe of the awakening wire. He stood at the protest heart, unclothed save for nature's regal drape, moss cloth rippling like a living sea, bark gatlets arched with the ruins of restraint. The air stirs, winds hold breath at the Father's sovereign command. Birds wheeled silently overhead as eternal witnesses. Thomas' voice, when it rose, was no bellow of ball or bullhorn. It was the earth all tremble, deep as cavern echo, resonating as thunder's afterglow, laced with the mother's sinking shore. You believe that you have a say in this? The word hung, heavy as pollen and satious, drawing the crowd into a collective inhale. Faces turned, defiance mask crackling under the weight of his gaze. Those gold flicked eyes that saw not just flesh, but the flickering souls beneath, tangled in threads of their own weaving. A young woman at the foe, her banner a tattered cloth that shook its leather, stepped forward, voice swear with we and hers rebellion. We won't bow to your resets, overlords. This world was ours before your veins claimed it. Thomas expressed and softened, not with pity, but with the quiet ferocity of a storm held in a breast. He extended a hand, palm scarred from the grip of ancient thorns, and from it bloomed a spectacular vein that coiled gently around her banner pole, not to seize, but to illuminate, its thorns glowing with inner fire. You lost the right of free will when you choose to believe that you are God's. The proclamation rippled outward, veins snaking through the assembly like veins of truth, brushing sleeves and stirring doubt. Murmurs swear, denials and fermentations, the raw churn of consciousness prod. He pressed on, his tone unyielding as granite, yet tender as loom. Habris crowned you with cycles and steel, with circus and steel, whisper that dominance was destiny. You filled the forest for thrones of your own making, poisoned the rivers for elections of endless youth, chained the winds to your whim. In that choice, the critter's gift, the true freedom of kinship, was forfeit, not by my degree, but by the scales of consequences. A man burly as an uproot oak thrust forward, his torch splattering defiance. Judgment, you're no judgment, just another tyrant in green. We protest your balance. It's change disguised as roots. The crowd rallied, a wave of nods and sneers. But Thomas met the fire with the steady burn of solar coal. Therefore, he continued, voice rising like a tide extraordinary. We are in the time of judgment. Lightning cracked overhead, not in wrath, but in proclamation. A bullet from the Father's force, illuminating the faces in stark relief. The proud tilt of chins, the glittering gleam of sideline glances, the clusterous glimpse of fists around means of redshirt. The ground trembled faintly, roots whispering accusations from below. Tears of aquifers drained, species silence, skies scarred. The reset is no rim, no cream's comprise. It is the mother's weary exhale, the father's forge reforged. Your deeds echo in the ether, tethered not by the legion of law, but by the blood's undying cry. The crimson ledger of the wide you claim as progress. Silence then fell, profound as the void between heartbeats, broken only by the constant, distant howl of reforming winds. Thomas swept his gaze across them, seeing the spiritual fractures always frayed by forgotten oaths, spirits shattered by the sins they bore like invisible brands. When you pass, he said, softening down, the words of a dread woven with dawn's promise, you are then judged to be or not to be part of the great crowd. Visions unfurled unbidden in the mind. Coats of calculate scales with swords crinched like autumn leaves in the wind. The great crowd, that luminous fog of redeemed co-tenors of the internal green, their forms intertwined with beast and bloom in harmonious drift, pushes the outer dark, a solitude of echoes where the unrepentant wonder as wrath, the God claims crumbling to dust. Everything is in the open, Thomas concludes. The veins retracted to leave the banner unscathed, now arched with glowing script. Choose kingship or cumber alone. No veil the verdict here. The simulation lays bare your blueprints. The choices arts in carbon and code. The sins shroud in silicone and soil. Protest if you purge the poison. Ernie, rage as if reveals the rod, but know this, the throne I wear is no cage for you, but a mirror. Gaze true and a judgment yet to grace. The assembly wavered, torches tipping like wary sentinels. Some near, tears tracing paths through dark, dust-caked cheeks, surrendering banners to the earth. Others slink into the encore of dust, the defiance dim but not downs. Seeds of future stones, perhaps, or sparks of relentless reform. The overseer watched from the fridge, the forms blending with the tree lines, ready to guide the gleaning. Thomas turned from the glade, the weight of wood settling like dew on his shoulders. Luna's distant light paused in illumination, the seven pieces sliding nearer. The protest had been no mere wimp, ripple. It was the simulation's pulse check, a reminder that free will's ghosts linger, demanding exorcism or embrace. As night clocks the spear, his eyes whisper to the stars. Your open eyes sees all fractures. Let judgment hear what it must rend. And in the quiet, the oak heart's roots dive deeper, craving the conflicting souls and patient for you. The cycle turns unhurried towards 2055 faithful tale. Next chapter. Awakening, Fracture of Stewardship. The echoes of the No King protest has scarcely faded into the oak heart's whispering annals when Thomas, the verdant sovereign, felt the earth's sobbing sigh, a tremor not of discord but of diffusion. Like a river seeking delays to spread its bounty wide, the seventh reset prelude cracking, its chronicle urging, currents urging a deeper dialogue. The mother's vast form, the internal cradle of clay and cosmos, could no longer be governed from a singular spirit. She was a mosaic of moods, deserts blooming and arts silent, tundras arched with icy patient script, jungles throbbing with verdant fury, each facet demanding a voice attuned to its pulse. In the sanctuary of the great tree's heartwood chamber, where bioluminescent fungus cast ruins of resolve on walls of living grain, Thomas converted the overseers once more. The air is hummed with the scent of smothering sage and Nassus rain, prelude to flirtation. With a gesture both Solomon and somatic, the king divided the mother into 10 zones, fractures of her infinity self, delineated not by arbitrary lines of longitude or the empire's iron borders, but the seamless poetry of her own veins, the ley lines of geometric grace, the migration arc of Avon legends, the tide hum of lunar pulse. These were no rigid rims, but fluid domains overlapping like the petals of a colossal bloom, where a zone edge blurred into its neighbor's breath. The first zone, The verdict fell compressed the equality grade of rain-drenched canopies and riverine labyrinth, where life layered upon life is ritual embrace. The second, the whispering step, stretched across the wind-scored plains and migrating grasslands, echoing with the heartbeat hums of nomadic turds. The third, the abyssal embrace, dived into the ocean, spears calcium, sapphire chasms, and core cathedrals, rims of pressure and phosphorescence. The fourth, the front fire frontier, claimed the popular expanse and Boer spears, where Aurora danced through with drifting flows. The fifth bloomed as the Ember Hearts Highlands, volcano spines like geothermic wounds pulsing with substandard fire. The sixth, the dust-filled deserts, credited the arid symphonics of desert and oasis, with survivors saying in spare, unstubborn notes. The seventh, the canopy crunchable, wove the mountain fastness and alpine meadows, thrones of thrones of steel, thrones of stone veiled in mist and myth. The eighth, the urban remnant, thread the reclaimed husk of fallen cities, where concrete bones were cloaked in creeper cathedrals and rooftop wires. The ninth, the exterior expanse, spanned the internal fringes, the spiritual overlays where physical teropathy met ancestry echoes, unseen yet ornament present. In the tenth, the nexus core, encircle the earth's beating heart, the magnetic poles of renewal, the sacred groves of origin, binding all zones in a web of whispering unanimity. To each zone, Thomas assigned an overseer, not as a conqueror, but as a chorus, a voice to amplify the people's plea, to meditate the mother's murmurs, to weave the thread of local lore into the grand tapestry of government. Along with her glade-born grace claimed the verdict fell, her whisper coaxing confessions from the canopy's hidden hollows, ensuring the people's harvest harmonized with the hum of hidden pollinators. Care, the tide binder, descended to the embrace, his phone adapting to gear and fin, surfacing only to relay the deep's degree. Tales of upwelling currents and the ghost of overfished ghosts, bargaining for the people's coastal kingship. Mara Flameheart kindled the Emberheart Highlands. Her fire forges form where herders aim, aired grievances against thorough magic green, transmuting anger into alliance with the earth and the blades. Thorn Ironroot anchored the frost fire frontier, his unyielding frame a bulwark against blizzards. Hating hearts where trappers and thaw watchers voice visions of vanishing ice. Navigating past arts in permafrost. Sylvia Airwaver soared over the whispering steps, her sapphires carrying patterns on thermal updrafts, apparating between wandering clans and the wind's wandering whims. Jonin the pennant burrowed into the dust-filled desert, his minor scars now maps of mercy, unearthing aquifers of equality where no men's debate. Water rights with the whisper of mirage. Lower the seer scare the canopy crucible, her prophecy side piercing cloud veils, converting wolf drillers to commune with cascading spirits, forestalling feuds over fog-fed falls. Drax the hominist thread the urban remnants, his hybrid hands rewiring ruins into revenant realms, horsing holographic huddles with survivors sparred over salvage, fusing forgotten tech with fungal fragments. Vipro Nightbloom enveloped the internal expanse, her healing gaze bridging the seen and unseen, drawing forth the disposed to dialogue with undiscarded pen, meeting rifts in the veil's frail weave. And Ronan the chronicler, ever the scribe of spans, stewards the nexus core, his core a governing reed that transcript the core's crusaders, gathering embassies from all zones and radical rights, chronicles of the chorus into cardocs of collective concept. So he basically became guardian of the libraries of knowledge. As the assignment sealed with the surge of solar flare, the father's luminous nod ignited the zone's borders in brief aerial bloom. Thomas addressed the assembly from the heart wound's hollow. Go forth, my voices of the veil, he intoned. His trumpet trembled through the tent like reeds and ravenous. Speak not over the people, but with them, echoing not just the ones, but the mothers once entwined. In these zones, let judgment find its gentle trend, discernment that shifts the sins from the seeds of serenity. The protest fires have forced its fractured fate. Let it illuminate, not incinerate. The overseers departed as dawn's first trying to tease the horizon. Each vanished into the domain with swirl of signature element. Elrond's polling plains, Korra's briny mist, Myra's ember trail. The people stood by spectral summons, dreaming visions of zoning sapphires and earthly indicates, began to migrate towards the zone's convictions, carriers curbing the embers of earlier air. In the verdict fair, Eloy's firstborn flowered under a colossal capot, with farmers and voyagers air crumbs about approaching creepers. Great waving compost in the embrace, Karasima senate bubbling in lagoon lip, divers and dividers debating net draft net drifts, tides turning testament into treaties. Yet as the zone quickened with corded crest, Thomas lingered in the nexus, his gaze lifting to Luna's watchful sickle. The pieces iterated, protest quailed into prominence, sins sympathizing into sagas. 2055 loomed larger, a lodestone in and loom. But for now, the mother's division breed balance. 10 zones, 10 tons, one throne. The simulations sigh in stagnant serenity. The great crowd echoes the castellated, one zone at a time. Sorry about that. For some reason, everything decided to fall over at the same time. I don't know what happened, but let's get back to the story of the Nature King. This chapter is called Awakening, Veil of Reference. The zone had begun to breathe as distinct yet intertwined lines of the mother, the borders pulsing with the absence of seasonal sights. Eloy's Valdate veil drifting symphonics of monsoon melodies, Carol's abyss embrace murdered in biolomic space. Yet at this crisp eve of October 25th, 2025, as the old calendar numerous flickered by dying embers in the simulation's undercoat, Thomas sensed the reed tightening. The seventh reset prelude crawled like a snake in the soil. The No King protest ashes had fertilized fractured forms, where voices in urban remnant classes over scattering circuits in the dust-filled desert, debating the drip of distant drews. Overseers relayed the rift in rallied masses, petitions piling like autumn leaves, griefers gnawing at the green's grievance roots, governance roots. The people, through humbled by zones, Zell Zen, tittered on threshold of true tender, eyes still shadowed by the sin's stubborn specters, hearts half hitched to the old illusion of isolation. From the nexus core throbbing hard, a canvas of colossal crystal with the Earth's magnetic motor thrummed like cholesterol cello. Thomas summoned the spectacle center. The ten overseers materialized in holographic cage, their forms fractured projection. Eloy's form framing her face, thorns stone veining his venture's fragment. Luna's light policing through the skylight of living quotes, casting chrono coronas that crown them in silver appreciation. Thomas stood at the chamber's clugs, his mark clock undiluting a breathing sea. Arthur crown aglow with the father's forged fire. The mother stood in stagnant slumber, he declared, his voice a verdict back to that vaulted vault. Threading intensively in every zone, Zeth, a colossal port in the vein, a geometric geyser in the ember, a rooftop room in the remnant. All division delegate, but do not divide. Now we decree a declaration of degree, a university ordinance as not in instant death, but in the gentle gradients of grace. This degree unfurled across the ten like a simulation sunrise, born on Sylvia's Zeth's and Cora's currents, inscribed in empathetic script on every leaf, wave, and wall. Decoration of degree for all zones, and no ironclad implosion, but a ladder of levels. Tears of trust was trusteeship ascended from already nurturing to elder empath, each ring a rite of replication with the land's layered lord. Inhabitants were ascend by acts of atonement, planting horticulture in the shed, purging plastic from the embrace entanglement, emphasizing harmonizing hums with the cascade. Overseers were overseer not with overseer's wrist, but with oracle's open hand, awarding ascent through zone zenith, with the worthy commune closer to the core. This degree your devotion. Thomas Trimble tore through the transmission, not measure not in metric of might, but in mother's metric. Harmony's hum, measured in the meaning of what was marred. But words alone was wind without the whetstone of withdrawal. Here now the heart of the herald, Thomas continued, his gold flake gray sweeping a spiritual circle. The overseers nodded and nodding noxus. A time by silence had descended upon all zones. Three dawns and dusk had delivered disconnect from the system. The simulation's scaffold, the lingering ledges of luminous links, those heart-filled holograms and newer nets that once shared shores and scores assimilated with severe. No page of phantom progress, no feed of filtered 4K. Devices dimmed into domain. Circus cloud and creepers cord. The children don't drowned in the analog anthem of the alone. Severe the shrines that strangle sight, he had turned. Veins from his paws protesting the protocol. Hands rising in ritual pose at twilight shore. A collected chart to close the connection. Unbind, unwind to the wired recline. The overseers arch out, echoed it outward, their voice a choric cascade. Elena in lighting lullaby, Mara in crackling casper, Vasper in velvet Vasper. Lower the shears in her canopy credible glossars, chronicles the convergence. A holder hearing the herd's ancient arch, barring vows of virginity phased pallaging. A diver in the abyss depths, discording dolphin dialogues with depleting deltas. emerging with energy from edible, incredible edibles. Well, a couple more chapters to the story, but I'm losing my voice, so I'm going to stop for there. Sorry about that.